Yeah, this is something that I think probably my first or at least most meaningful memories come from Joe when we were working together at Aptus. There was a year I think that we hired about 100 salespeople in 1 year, and that was roughly a doubling of our sales capacity. And we brought all of those people in and did, pretty robust training program. We had pre-learning work that they needed to do before they even came on board. We had a week-long boot camp. We had, follow-up trainings, webinars, all that sort of stuff. And when you're dealing with a large population like that, 100 people at a time or something, you can see real time in the room who is really loving that format and whose eyes are glazing over and who is, certainly going to fail the certification at the end of the week because they couldn't stick with exactly how we were teaching them. And that is not necessarily correlated with who's going to be successful in sales, because very little of what you're doing in a sales job has to do with the types of learning that are going on in a classroom setting. I mean, those classroom settings tend to be one-way communication. Sales is about two-way communication. And the list goes on with all of the ways in which those things are different. Ultimately, in that role that, I had that experience, it was in a sales enablement role. But when I talk to people in learning and development across the industry, that's not unique to sales. That is just, human nature. We have to address people in a way that engages them and gets them to have the energy, the buy-in, sort of the want to do it. And really, at a point where, there's a lot of different ways to measure how successful training has been, whether it's quizzes or on-the-job performance or productivity enhancement. The most basic way that anyone can measure any sort of training is engagement. Did people engage in it while they were engaged in the training? Were they, lively and active, or were they just waiting for it to be complete? And were they really personally invested in it? And I think when we don't not just train sellers in their preferred form, when we don't engage humans in a way in which they find invigorating, energizing, then you lose them, and you don't get knowledge retention. You risk alienating them because they know what they need to be successful. They know what they're missing, and if all you're doing is shoving facts down their throat in a way in which they can't absorb it, you're just not going to get the impact that you would expect. I mean, I think a lot of people think of training as an exercise where people without knowledge sit in front of someone with knowledge, and that person transfers the knowledge to them. But that transfer is either high fidelity or low fidelity based on a number of factors. One of them being, is this the format in which I learn best? When companies or anyone who's trying to teach anyone anything offer a variety of formats, whether they're audio or whether it's just in time on demand training, or whether it's a searchable library, when you're able to offer a variety of formats, not only do you sort of get that benefit of variety that switches things up from being just pure vanilla all the time, you're far more likely to engage people in a way, in a mode, in a format that is actually their favorite. We hear a lot about things like I'm an auditory learner or I'm a visual learner, and whether or not those things are actually phenomena. I think we all have an experience of, the types of learning that makes us fall asleep versus the types of learning where we felt like that was energizing. And it's not the same for everyone. And finding that requires you to understand where the learner is coming from, but also to meet that learner with something that will engage them. And that fundamentally requires variety of formats.